Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans, not the industry, and definitely not T.I. himself. Just hours ago, a moment unfolded that sent shockwaves through the entire celebrity world, one so heavy that insiders are already calling it the end of an era. At the center of it all is Tameka "Tiny" Harris, who, according to circulating reports, has been sentenced. What allegedly happened inside that courtroom wasn't just emotional. It was intense in a way that words can barely capture. Witnesses describe a room that fell completely silent as the judge began reading the decision. There were no cameras, no official footage, but the details that reportedly leaked afterward painted a chilling picture: tears, tension, and a moment that felt final in a way that left everyone shaken. Yet what makes this even more unsettling is that it didn't come out of nowhere. For months, there had been quiet whispers behind the scenes, unconfirmed reports, talk of investigations, sealed documents, things that most people dismissed as just another rumor cycle. Fans brushed it off, blogs ignored it, and even some insiders didn't take it seriously. But this time they were wrong, because what's now being described feels far bigger than anyone expected, and the reaction from T.I. has only added to the mystery. Some see his stance as loyalty, standing beside his wife no matter what, while others are beginning to question whether there's more beneath the surface. That leads to the question everyone is asking: what really happened? And why are some people saying this might not be the end, but only the beginning? To understand how things reached this point, you have to go back, because this story didn't start in that courtroom. It started years ago, quietly, almost invisibly. For a long time, T.I. and Tiny weren't just a couple. They were a brand, a dynasty that seemed untouchable. From music to television to business ventures, they built an image of unity and strength, convincing the world that no matter what came their way, they would always survive it. But behind that image, cracks were forming. At first, they were subtle, whispers in industry circles, hints that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Nothing loud enough to go viral, nothing concrete enough to confirm, but enough to make people wonder. Over time, those whispers grew louder, and Tameka "Tiny" Harris began appearing at the center of conversations that didn't quite make sense. Her public presence shifted, her interviews became more guarded, and her inner circle seemed to shrink. To most people, it didn't mean much, but to those paying attention, something felt different. Then came what insiders describe as the first real red flag, an incident that was publicly brushed off as a misunderstanding, but privately marked the beginning of something much bigger. Allegations began surfacing, not loudly or explosively, but seriously enough that people within the industry started asking questions. And every time something surfaced, it disappeared just as quickly. Posts went viral and then vanished. Accounts spoke out and then fell silent. And even bloggers who tried to dig deeper suddenly backed off. That's when suspicion began to grow, because it didn't feel random anymore. It felt controlled. Meanwhile, on the surface, everything appeared normal. There were family photos, interviews, and business moves that suggested nothing had changed. But if you looked closely, something felt off. The energy seemed forced, the smiles didn't quite match the moment, and the overall image felt carefully managed. Fans started noticing too, asking subtle questions about whether everything was really okay behind the scenes. While all of this unfolded publicly, something else was happening privately: quiet investigations. Documents were being reviewed, testimonies were being collected, and details were slowly coming together. According to some reports, Tameka "Tiny" Harris may have been aware that the situation was becoming serious, but like many in similar circumstances, the assumption was that it wouldn't reach this level, that it could be contained. But it didn't stay contained. The whispers grew louder, old clips resurfaced, past interviews were re-examined, and moments from years ago were suddenly being questioned. People began asking whether they had missed something all along. Then came the pressure. Media outlets started circling, fans demanded answers, and T.I. stepped in, defensive and vocal, dismissing everything as false and accusing others of trying to damage their legacy. For a brief moment it worked, and the narrative shifted back in their favor. But behind the scenes, the situation only intensified. Then came the turning point, a leak that wasn't just rumor but something more concrete. Reports suggested documents, audio fragments, and timelines that didn't match the public story. Once that information reached the right hands, everything accelerated. Legal teams became involved, and people who had remained silent for years began speaking out. One voice in particular stood out, someone once close to Tiny, someone with access to private conversations and details never meant to be public. When they spoke, they didn't hint, they described, and what they described painted a very different picture, one that felt far removed from the polished image presented to the public. Social media erupted as screenshots, conversations, and timelines began circulating, connecting dots in ways that felt impossible to ignore. That's when authorities reportedly stepped in, and what had been quietly building could no longer remain hidden. According to some accounts, panic set in behind closed doors. Urgent calls, emergency meetings, and attempts to understand just how serious the situation had become. At the same time, T.I. doubled down, standing beside Tiny and continuing to call the situation a setup. But this time, not everyone believed him. Old interviews resurfaced with new meaning, and piece by piece, a different narrative began to form, one that didn't align with the image they had spent years building. Then came the day everything changed, the courtroom. No cameras, no public spectacle, just a quiet moment that insiders say made one thing clear: this was real. Inside, the atmosphere was described as heavy and tense, almost suffocating. Tameka "Tiny" Harris reportedly appeared shaken, not dramatically, but in a way that made the weight of the moment undeniable. At first, it seemed like everything revolved around a single allegation, but then another layer emerged, bigger, more complex, and impossible to ignore. Suddenly, the narrative shifted again. This wasn't just about one incident. It hinted at something deeper, something that may have been building for much longer than anyone realized. And when that second layer came into view, even the strongest defenders went silent. Because the question was no longer just about what happened recently. It became about how long this had really been going on and who might have known. And right now, that's where things stand, not with answers, but with heavy, uncomfortable questions. Because whatever the truth is, it's bigger than what we've seen so far, and if more details come out, this story might not just change. It might reshape everything people thought they knew. Nobody expected things to escalate like this. But that's exactly what happened. Just when it felt like the situation had already reached its breaking point, a new layer emerged that didn't just add tension, it completely redefined the narrative. The story people thought they understood suddenly felt incomplete, like they had only been reacting to fragments instead of the full picture. Within 48 hours of Tiny being quietly pulled into questioning, a coordinated wave of leaks flooded the internet. This wasn't random noise or scattered gossip. It felt structured, deliberate, almost strategic. Threads appeared across platforms, carefully pieced together with video clips, timelines, and what many believed to be supporting evidence. Each post built on the last, forming a version of events that was difficult to ignore and even harder to dismiss. At the center of this storm was a new voice, someone reportedly much closer to the situation than anyone who had spoken before. Unlike earlier sources who hinted or speculated, this individual claimed direct involvement. They didn't speak in vague terms. They provided details, specific locations, exact dates, names, sequences. And what made it even more unsettling was how those details directly contradicted the public image that had been maintained for years. The internet didn't just react, it erupted. Hashtags spread rapidly. Discussions turned into debates, and debates turned into digital battlegrounds. Some people immediately believed everything being presented, convinced that the level of detail couldn't be fabricated. Others pushed back hard, arguing that it was a calculated attempt to dismantle a powerful image. The divide became impossible to ignore. Then came the shift from online chaos to real-world consequences. What had been quietly building behind the scenes was no longer contained. The investigation moved into the open, and everything accelerated. Legal proceedings intensified, and insiders began describing the situation as far more serious than anyone had initially assumed. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere reportedly became heavy, almost suffocating. Those present described moments where the energy shifted so dramatically that it was clear something bigger was unfolding. This wasn't just about one accusation or a single event anymore. As more information surfaced during the process, additional names began to appear. Connections formed. Patterns started to emerge. That realization changed everything. It suggested that the situation might extend beyond one individual, beyond one incident. Suddenly, people weren't just asking what happened. They were asking how far it went and who else might be involved. One of the most talked about moments came after a key session when a leak pointed toward a pattern connecting multiple past events. Incidents that had once seemed unrelated were now being linked together. Old clips resurfaced. Conversations were re-examined. Moments that had been dismissed years ago were now being viewed through a completely different lens. The tone of the entire conversation shifted overnight. This was no longer just celebrity drama. It felt serious, layered, and potentially far-reaching. And then something unexpected happened: silence. T.I., who had been vocal earlier, suddenly stopped speaking publicly. No posts, no interviews, no direct responses. That silence became one of the loudest elements of the entire situation. People began to question why. Was it strategy? Was it restraint? Or was it because the situation had reached a point where words could no longer control the narrative? That question hung in the air as the tension continued to build. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for: the decision. When the verdict was finally delivered, it didn't just impact those inside the courtroom. It sent shockwaves outward. Within minutes, reactions flooded every platform. Videos, headlines, live streams. Everyone was trying to process what had just happened in real time. But instead of closure, it created more confusion. For some, it felt like the end of everything. For others, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Social media became a space of constant debate. One side expressed disbelief, struggling to reconcile the outcome with the image they had believed in for years. Another side insisted this was inevitable, pointing to past rumors and patterns they felt had been ignored. A third group remained cautious, arguing that too much was still unknown to draw any final conclusions. And then the conversation evolved again. Industry voices started to speak. At first, the messages were subtle, cryptic posts, vague statements, things that hinted without confirming. But gradually, they became more direct. Comments began to suggest that what the public was seeing might only be a portion of the full story, that there were layers still hidden, that more could come out. That idea changed the entire perspective. People stopped focusing only on what had happened and started questioning what hadn't been revealed yet. The narrative shifted from reaction to investigation. At the same time, mainstream coverage added another layer of complexity. Some outlets treated it as a dramatic fall from grace. Others approached it cautiously, hinting at ongoing developments without diving too deep. A few remained noticeably quiet, which only fueled speculation further. Why wasn't everyone covering it the same way? Why did it feel like certain details were being held back? Those questions only added to the uncertainty. Meanwhile, old footage began circulating again. Interviews, reality show moments, public appearances, all re-examined with fresh eyes. Interactions that once seemed normal were now being analyzed for hidden meaning. Supporters defended the couple, pointing to their long history and resilience. Critics highlighted inconsistencies, demanding accountability. And through all of it, one thing remained consistent. Nobody felt like they had the full story. Then came a moment that shifted attention once again. T.I. reappeared, but not in the way anyone expected. There was no emotional speech, no detailed explanation, no attempt to directly address the situation. Instead, he posted a single, short message. Truth always comes out, but not always the way people think. That was it. 12 words. And somehow, those 12 words created even more questions than answers. The internet immediately began dissecting it. Was it a statement of confidence, a subtle defense, or a hint that something bigger was still hidden beneath the surface? People analyzed the timing, the wording, even the decision to say so little. Because sometimes, what isn't said becomes just as important as what is. That message didn't calm anything. It intensified everything. And just when it felt like the situation couldn't get any more unpredictable, another twist arrived. A former associate, someone who had remained silent through every previous phase, suddenly released a video. No build-up, no warning. Just a direct message. They looked straight into the camera and spoke with a level of certainty that immediately grabbed attention. There was no hesitation, no ambiguity. And then came the line that changed everything. Y'all don't even know half of it, and when the rest comes out, it's over for more than just tiny. That statement hit hard, because it didn't just suggest missing details. It suggested a much bigger picture, one that hadn't been revealed yet, one that could potentially change everything again. And just like that, the narrative shifted once more. Now the question wasn't just about what had happened. It was about what was still coming. Because if even a portion of that statement is true, then this story isn't anywhere near finished. It's still unfolding. And every new detail has the potential to reshape everything people think they know. Right now, the situation sits in a space of uncertainty. Some believe the outcome speaks for itself. Others believe there's still more to be uncovered. And a growing number of people are starting to realize that both things might be true at the same time. Because in situations like this, reality is rarely simple. It's layered, complicated, and often incomplete until the very end. What makes this moment so powerful isn't just the outcome, it's the unanswered questions that remain. The gaps in the narrative, the silence from key figures, the hints from those who claim to know more. All of it points to one thing. There's still more to this story. And until that full picture is revealed, everything we're seeing right now might just be one chapter in something much larger. So the real question isn't just what happened. It's what happens next. Nobody expected the situation to keep escalating. But that's exactly what happened. Just when it seemed like things might settle after the sentencing, everything shifted again. A short clip spread rapidly across social media, gaining millions of views within hours and changing the entire focus of the conversation. Instead of processing what had already happened, people began bracing for what might come next. The energy didn't calm down, it intensified, and a growing realization took hold. This story is far from over. If even a fraction of the hints and warnings circulating online are true, then the biggest revelations may still be ahead. That feeling only deepened later that same night when a new leak surfaced. At first, it moved quietly, shared in smaller circles, but it didn't stay contained for long. Within hours, it was everywhere. It was a short, raw audio clip allegedly recorded months before the case became public. The voice sounded familiar, but what stood out wasn't just who might be speaking. It was how they were speaking. The tone was careful, measured, almost tense, as if every word had been chosen with extreme caution. There was no dramatic confession, no emotional outburst, but beneath the calm delivery was a sense of something much heavier. According to those who claim to have heard the full version, the conversation suggested that the situation might be far more complex than a single isolated incident. It hinted at something broader, something connected, and possibly something involving more than one person. The moment people began linking that audio to everything that had already come out, the narrative flipped again. The question was no longer just what happened, but who else is involved, and how far does this actually go? That shift changed everything. What once looked like a single case started to feel like part of something larger, and with that realization came a wave of unease, not just among fans but reportedly within the industry itself. Almost immediately, subtle changes began to appear. Old posts were quietly deleted. Past collaborations started disappearing. Some public figures who had been speaking openly just hours before suddenly went completely silent. That kind of abrupt silence didn't go unnoticed. It raised questions about what might be happening behind the scenes and whether something bigger had triggered that shift. Then, just as the tension reached another peak, a second leak appeared. This time it wasn't audio but a document, detailed, structured, and filled with timelines, connections, and references that seemed to link multiple past incidents together. No one could confirm its authenticity with certainty, but the level of detail was enough to make even skeptics pause. If the information held any truth, then the sentencing wasn't the conclusion. It was only the beginning. That idea spread quickly, turning speculation into deeper investigation, as people began revisiting old stories and re-examining past events with new perspective. Conversations moved beyond reaction and into analysis, with many wondering whether the public had only seen a fraction of what was actually happening. At the same time, whispers began circulating more openly. Not official statements, but warnings shared in comments and private discussions, that things were about to get bigger, that more names might surface, that some people were already stepping back out of fear. These weren't confirmed facts, but they added to the growing sense that something deeper was unfolding. Even earlier statements started to feel different in this new context. A simple line like "truth always comes out" now carried a heavier meaning. Because the question was no longer just about truth, it was about whose truth and how much of it was still hidden. Then came one final update that shifted everything once again. A short, cryptic message appeared from a source claiming proximity to the situation. This case isn't closed, it's expanding. There was no proof attached, no further explanation, but those 4 words alone were enough to change the tone completely. What had felt final suddenly didn't anymore. If the case is still expanding, then what people have witnessed so far may only be the surface. The idea that more developments could be coming has now taken over the conversation, shifting focus from what has happened to what might happen next. That's where things stand now, in a state of uncertainty. Some people believe the outcome speaks for itself, that everything important has already been revealed. Others are convinced that the real story hasn't even come out yet, and many are starting to feel that both perspectives might hold some truth at the same time. Because in situations like this, clarity rarely comes all at once. It unfolds slowly, often in pieces, and sometimes only after the most critical moments have already passed. What makes this situation different is the constant shifting of the narrative. Every new detail seems to raise more questions instead of providing answers. The silences, the disappearing content, the cryptic messages, they all contribute to a sense that something remains hidden. Trust becomes harder to maintain in that kind of environment, and speculation begins to fill the gaps left behind. People aren't just reacting anymore. They're trying to understand a story that doesn't yet feel complete. At its core, the biggest question now isn't what has already happened. It's what hasn't been revealed yet. If this situation is truly expanding, then more names, more details, and more connections could still surface. That possibility is what's keeping everyone watching closely. Because if this is only the beginning, then the full scope of what's unfolding may be far greater than anyone initially imagined. For now, the truth remains incomplete. It may come through official updates, or through more leaks, or slowly over time as pieces fall into place. But one thing is clear: this story hasn't reached its end. It's still developing, still shifting, and still leaving people with more questions than answers. And until those answers come, the sense that something bigger is on the horizon will continue to grow.
Not letting anything stop her.
And that growing sense of
makes me
something
so proud.
bigger on the horizon
And
is exactly
Tiny
what's
reveals
keeping
how
this
she's
situation
survived
alive.
bullying
Because
throughout
in
her
most
career.
cases like
I
this,
know who
once
I
a
am,
verdict
and
is delivered, the noise slowly fades. Conversations die down, attention shifts, and people move on. But here, the opposite is happening. Instead of closure, there's momentum. Instead of answers, there are more questions. And instead of silence bringing calm, it's creating even more tension. One of the biggest reasons for that is the behavior of the people closest to the situation. Normally, after something this major, you would expect clear reactions, statements, denials, explanations, something to guide public understanding. But here, everything feels controlled, measured, almost deliberately limited. That kind of restraint doesn't go unnoticed. In fact, it often signals that there are factors at play that the public isn't fully aware of yet. Whether that's legal pressure, strategic silence, or simply the weight of what's still unfolding, it all adds to the mystery. At the same time, the internet isn't slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. People are going back through years of content, old interviews, past appearances, forgotten moments, and looking at them through a completely different lens. Things that once seemed harmless are now being questioned. Small details are being pulled apart, analyzed, and connected in ways they never were before. It's like the entire timeline is being rebuilt in real time, piece by piece, as if everyone is trying to find the missing link that explains everything. And that's the key word right now, missing. Because no matter how much information has surfaced, it still feels incomplete, like there's a central piece of the story that hasn't been revealed yet. Something that would make all the contradictions make sense. Something that would connect the leaks, the silence, the reactions, and the sudden shifts in behavior into one clear picture. Until that piece comes out, the speculation will continue, and it will keep growing. What's also interesting is how divided the conversation has become. You have one group that believes everything we're seeing points to something serious and undeniable. To them, the patterns are too consistent, the details too aligned, and the reactions too calculated for this to be random. Then there's another group that believes the entire situation is being amplified, possibly exaggerated, and that without confirmed facts, people are jumping to conclusions too quickly. And in the middle, there's a third group, arguably the largest right now, that simply believes we don't know enough yet to take a definitive stance. The middle ground is where most of the tension is coming from. Because uncertainty creates discomfort, and discomfort keeps people engaged. Every new leak, every cryptic message, every unexpected silence feeds into that uncertainty. It creates a cycle where people feel like they're constantly on the edge of a major reveal, even if that reveal hasn't come yet. And the longer that cycle continues, the more intense the speculation becomes. There's also another layer to this that can't be ignored, the idea of timing. None of these developments feel random. The clip, the audio, the document, the statements, they didn't all appear at once. They came in waves, each one arriving just as the conversation was about to slow down, pulling attention right back in. That pattern raises an important question. Is this just how information is unfolding naturally, or is it being released in a way that keeps the narrative active? Because if it's the latter, then that suggests something even more complex is happening behind the scenes. It suggests that someone or multiple people may have more information and are choosing when and how it comes out. And if that's true, then we haven't seen the most important part of the story yet. Another detail that stands out is the shift in tone across the board. Earlier, the conversation was emotional, shock, disbelief, reaction. Now it's more analytical. People are asking deeper questions, looking for patterns, challenging assumptions. That transition usually happens when a story moves from surface-level drama into something more layered. And right now, this definitely feels layered. Because nothing is straightforward. Every explanation seems to have a counterpoint. Every detail seems to open another question. And every conclusion feels temporary. That's why the phrase, "this isn't over," keeps coming up again and again. Not just as speculation, but as a general feeling shared by people watching closely. There's a sense that we're in the middle of something, not at the end of it. And that feeling is hard to ignore. especially when you look at how things are still changing in real time. People are still reacting, still deleting, still going quiet, still hinting. Those are not signs of a situation that has settled. Those are signs of something still in motion. And until that motion stops, until there's a clear, confirmed, and complete picture, this story is going to stay exactly where it is, unresolved. So now everything comes down to what happens next. Will there be another leak? Will someone finally speak out clearly? Will official information confirm or contradict what's already circulating? Or will the silence continue, allowing speculation to grow even further? Right now, nobody knows. And that uncertainty is what's keeping everyone watching. Because at this point, it's not just about what's already happened. It's about what's still coming. And based on everything we've seen so far, it feels like whatever comes next could change everything all over again. And that's what makes this moment in time so intense. Because unlike typical celebrity scandals, this isn't just a series of events that fade into memory after a verdict or a public statement. The stakes feel larger. The ripple effects feel broader. Every new hint, every leaked clip, every cryptic post serves as a reminder that the story is far from over and that the final chapter, if there ever is one, might completely redefine everything we thought we knew about the people involved. The reactions we're seeing now are telling. Fans, insiders, journalists, and casual observers are all trying to piece together the puzzle simultaneously, but the pieces don't fit neatly. That's deliberate or accidental, nobody can say for sure yet. What is clear is that the public is becoming hyper-aware of nuance, timing, and the subtle shifts in behavior from key figures. The cryptic statements, the moments of silence, the sudden deletions, they're all being scrutinized as if they are direct clues to something much larger than just tiny sentencing. Even the smallest gestures are now being overanalyzed. A facial expression, a social media story, a deleted post, each one sparks new conversations. The online community has essentially become a live investigation, mapping out timelines, dissecting interviews from years ago, and cross-referencing every clip that could hold hidden meaning. Analysts and influencers are producing detailed breakdowns hour by hour. Some are creating entire visual timelines connecting Tiny's past public appearances, TI statements, and leaked materials to show a potential chain of events spanning several years. These reconstructions, whether accurate or speculative, feed directly into the growing uncertainty. Meanwhile, TI's silence, or measured responses, adds a new layer of tension. In most high-profile cases, the person at the center of the storm would dominate the conversation with interviews, statements, or social media posts. But the absence of a clear, prolonged response feels intentional. It communicates control, restraint, or perhaps a recognition that the situation has grown too large to manage alone. Every cryptic phrase he posts is parsed endlessly, every timing decision scrutinized. People are asking, is he waiting for the right moment? Or is he quietly trying to protect something or someone that the public hasn't seen yet? The second wave of leaks that surfaced after the sentencing complicated things even further. Audio clips, documents, and insider statements began painting a picture far more intricate than the public had been led to believe. Suddenly, Tiny's case was no longer just about a single incident. There were connections, patterns, and timelines pointing to a wider network of interactions. Names and events long forgotten resurfaced in ways that suggested the alleged activity had deeper roots and possibly broader implications. That alone raised critical questions. How many others were involved? How long has this been ongoing? And who else might be affected if the full story is revealed? The effect on the industry is notable. According to insiders, several collaborators, previously outspoken supporters, and even people who once benefited from Tiny and TI's public influence began stepping back. Some deleted content. Others went quiet online. There's a sense that the internal awareness of the scandal is far greater than what the public sees. The public sees clips and statements, but behind closed doors, decisions are being made, reputations are being protected, and moves are being calculated with precision. That adds an entirely new level of tension, because it implies that the consequences may extend beyond what has already leaked. And that brings us to the role of timing. Every leak, every statement, every subtle shift seems to occur when the public begins to assume the story is winding down. The narrative surges forward just as people feel they might finally have a sense of resolution. That pattern makes many observers wonder if the releases are being strategically controlled, almost like a domino effect, where each new piece is designed to keep attention high and speculation alive. If that's true, then there's a deliberate architecture to the information flow, suggesting insiders know far more than we realize, and are choosing carefully what to share and when. As a result, the uncertainty continues to feed itself. Social media, blogs, and forums are now operating like live newsrooms and investigative panels at once. Every rumor is dissected, every statement questioned, and every fragment of information triggers debates and theories. Even minor details like a tone of voice, a paused clip, or a cryptic emoji become points of discussion. Fans create visual charts, timelines, and interactive maps to trace connections, making the public's engagement feel almost like an extension of the investigation itself. The scale of analysis is unprecedented for a celebrity scandal, illustrating the unique intensity of this situation. At the same time, the divide between supporters and skeptics grows sharper. One side argues that the couple is being unfairly targeted, that powerful forces are trying to dismantle their success, and that the timing of the leaks is too precise to be random. They point to the couple's long history of overcoming adversity and insist that jealousy, rivalry, and systemic bias are at play. The other side counters that the level of specificity in the leaks, combined with corroborating details and insider reports, suggests that there is a substantive truth to the allegations. They believe the silence and cryptic responses aren't signs of innocence, but rather indicators of a story that's far more complex than the public has been allowed to see. The consequences of this tension are magnified because nothing in the public record feels permanent. Clips can be deleted, posts can vanish, statements can be retracted. Each disappearance, however, is interpreted as a potential clue. Every moment of silence is read as deliberate, calculated, or revealing. In such an environment, perception and interpretation become nearly as significant as the facts themselves, creating a landscape where uncertainty is almost impossible to resolve until more concrete information emerges. What's more, the cascading leaks and developments raise questions not just about the individuals involved, but about the larger systems surrounding them. Legal processes, insider networks, media strategies, and public relations efforts are all being scrutinized. People are asking, how did this remain hidden for so long? Who knew what and when? Are other high-profile figures connected? Could there be a broader pattern affecting multiple parts of the industry? Each new question further expands the narrative, making the story feel bigger, deeper, and more urgent than any single verdict or leak could ever convey. And all of this brings us back to the central uncertainty, the idea that the case is still expanding. Even as the public digests the sentencing, the cryptic messages, and the first waves of leaks, there's growing speculation that this is only the beginning. If the investigation is ongoing, if more information and more names are yet to surface, then the story is far from complete. In fact, every indication suggests that what the public has seen so far might be only a fraction of what insiders already know. That possibility alone keeps tension at a constant high and ensures that attention remains focused, even as the situation becomes more complex and harder to follow. Ultimately, what we are witnessing is not a closed chapter. Tiny's sentencing may represent a tangible milestone, but the broader narrative is still unfolding. Leaks, insider statements, cryptic messages, and unexplained silences all contribute to an environment where clarity is constantly deferred. Each day brings potential for new revelations, reinterpretations of old information, and further disruption of assumptions. In this context, every viewer, fan, or observer becomes part of a collective analysis, attempting to anticipate the next move, the next leak, or the next official statement. In conclusion, the unfolding situation surrounding Tiny and T.I. has transcended the usual boundaries of celebrity drama. It is a complex, multi-layered narrative in which timing, silence, insider knowledge, and public perception all interact in real time. The story is far from over. Every leak, every cryptic post, every disappearing clip, and every moment of silence adds depth, raises questions, and fuels speculation. The public is not just watching a scandal. They are witnessing a saga that is still in motion, one in which the next revelations have the potential to completely redefine the narrative, the reputations involved, and possibly even the broader entertainment landscape. The only certainty right now is this: the story is far from finished, and whatever comes next, leaks, statements, or revelations, has the power to shift everything we think we know. Every observer is left to ask the same questions. Who else might be involved? What hasn't been revealed yet? And how much larger could this network of secrets really be? Until those answers arrive, the suspense, the speculation, and the tension will continue to grow, leaving the public waiting, watching, and wondering what the next chapter will reveal.